The dark history of America's national parks. Say we gaze upon them, these bastions of natural beauty, with reverence and awe. America's national parks, symbols of conservation, places of solace, and playgrounds for the soul. Millions flock to their grandeur each year, seeking adventure, tranquility, and a connection to something larger than themselves. But beneath the breathtaking panoramas and the narratives of intrepid explorers lies a history often overlooked, a story etched with displacement, broken promises, and the profound cost of preservation. This is the dark history of America's national parks. To understand this darkness, we must first journey back in time, long before the first surveyor's stake was driven or the first park superintendent appointed. For millennia, these lands, now protected as national parks, were vibrant, living landscapes for indigenous peoples. They were not wilderness waiting to be discovered, but rather homes, hunting grounds, sacred sites, and ancestral domains. The Yosemite Valley, for instance, was the cherished homeland of the Ahwahneechee people. The majestic peaks of Glacier National Park were integral to the Blackfeet, Salish, and Kootenai nations. The vast expanse of the Grand Canyon, a spiritual heartland for countless tribes, including the Havasupai, Hualapai, and Navajo. Those communities possessed an intimate knowledge of the land, honed over countless generations. Their cultures, languages, and spiritual beliefs were inextricably linked to the mountains, rivers, and forests that defined these regions. They practiced sophisticated land management techniques, including controlled burns, to maintain ecological balance and foster biodiversity. Their relationship with nature was one of reciprocity and deep respect, a stark contrast to the European colonial mindset that viewed land as a commodity to be conquered and controlled. The mid-19th century saw the burgeoning idea of setting aside lands for public enjoyment and future generations. Yellowstone, the world's first national park, was established in 1872. While lauding as a visionary act of preservation, its creation, and that of subsequent parks, was often achieved through the forceful removal of the indigenous inhabitants who had lived there for centuries. The concept of wilderness that underpinned the park movement was inherently exclusionary, requiring the land to be empty of human presence, a convenient justification for dispossessing Native Americans. The stories of forced removals are heartbreaking and echo through generations. In Yosemite, the Ahwahneechee were driven from their valley, their homes burned, and their way of life shattered. The Havasupai, whose ancestral lands lay within the Grand Canyon, faced relentless pressure and violence, the community clinging precariously to a small reservation carved out within the park boundaries. In Glacier, the creation of the park significantly reduced the land available to the Blackfeet Nation, severing their connection to vital hunting grounds and sacred sites. These removals were often brutal, carried out by the U.S. Army, and accompanied by violence, starvation, and disease. The Indian wars of the era were not just about territorial expansion. They were intrinsically linked to the desire to clear the land for settlement, resource extraction, and increasingly, for these new wilderness parks. The promise of protection and preservation for nature came at a devastating cost to human community. Even when treaties were signed, they were frequently broken. Promises of access, hunting rights, and compensation were often ignored or systematically undermined by the government and park authorities. Indigenous peoples were often seen as obstacles to the pristine ideal of the parks, their presence deemed incompatible with the visitor experience. The narrative crafted around the early national parks largely erased the indigenous presence. Visitors were encouraged to imagine an untouched wilderness, devoid of human history, a blank canvas for American identity. This romanticized view, while appealing, was a deliberate act of historical revisionism, masking the violent displacement that made such wilderness accessible to a new generation of predominantly white tourists. In more recent decades, there has been a growing recognition of this stark legacy. Historians, indigenous activists, and even some park officials are working to acknowledge and confront this painful past. Efforts are being made to incorporate indigenous perspectives into park interpretation, to support cultural programs, and to explore co-management agreements. For example, in places like Bears Ears National Monument, Indigenous tribes are actively involved in the management and protection of culturally significant sites. Yosemite National Park has begun to include the Wenatchee history and language in its educational materials. These are vital steps, but the wounds of displacement run deep, and the path to true reconciliation is long and complex. The beauty of our national parks remains undeniable. They are truly national treasures, but our appreciation of them must be tempered with an understanding of their true origins. We cannot fully embrace the splendor of these landscapes without acknowledging the sacrifices made, the cultures disrupted, and the lives forever altered in their creation. This dark history is not meant to diminish the value of these parks, but rather to enrich our understanding of them. It challenges us to look beyond the postcard perfect images and to grapple with the uncomfortable truths embedded within their very foundations. It compels us to ask, what does it mean to protect nature when that protection comes at the expense of human communities? How do we honor both the land and the people who were its original stewards? By confronting this history, we can move towards a more inclusive and just vision for our national parks, one that celebrates their natural wonder while also honoring the full, complex, and often heartbreaking stories of the people who shaped them, and were shaped by them, long before they ever became national parks. The story of those lands is not just a story of beauty, but a testament to resilience, a call for remembrance, and a powerful reminder that history, like the earth itself, is layered, profound, and always speaking if we are willing to listen.